money, 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 money. If you're an author, you probably need money to survive in this business. But if you're just starting off, it can be daunting to even make your first dollar. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to make your first $100 as a writer. What's up, guys? Michael Aran with Author Level Up here, helping you write world-class stories better and faster. And I create these writing videos because I believe that each of you has Stephen King level talent and you just need help unlocking it. So if you're new here, consider subscribing and click that little bell, ding, 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 to get notifications every time I have a new writing video. And in this video, we're talking about how to make your first $100 as a writer. And the question is, if it were me, what would I do just starting out to make $100 or my first $100 as a writer? Because it took me nearly a year and 8 books before I made $100 from my writing. Literally, it took me that long. And so how would I do that? But before I start, just remember I've got another video that's a companion to this video on how to make your first $1,000 as a writer. So you can check that out as well if you're a little bit further along on the path. So first things first, step 0 or tip number 0 is that you have to have a good book cover, good book description, and good editing. That is just the price of admission. If you don't have those things, it's going to be very hard for you to make much meaningful money long term anyway, because readers, they want good books, right? So you have to spend that money to make sure that you've got those 3 things. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. So to start, as I was writing my book, what I would do is I would pick a platform, either blogging, podcasting, or video, and I would go all in on that platform. So that could even be social media. I mean, if you want to do Instagram, whatever that is, pick one platform that you can express and start to build your voice. And I would go all in on that. And I wouldn't spam my book. Please don't do that. That's not what people want. But I would just talk about my journey and talk about what it is that I'm doing, how I'm building this book, what my thoughts are, how I'm feeling along the way. And I would just have conversations with people. I wouldn't even talk about my book. I might even post about it once a week or maybe once a month or whatever I felt comfortable with. But here's the thing about that is you're going to make these random connections with people who might be interested in buying the book. And even if you do that once or twice, that's going to go a long way to help you start to build that audience and build that relationship. But I would start that while I was writing the novel. It's never too late to start something like that, right? But it's better to start that before you're writing the novel. And another thing about it is I would make sure that I was consistent. So I've talked all the time about how one of my biggest failures in the writing business period was not being consistent, right? So if you commit to blogging, make sure you blog once a week, even if no one's watching. So then the question is, well, what do you pick? Do you pick blogging? Do you pick podcasting? Do you pick Facebook? Do you pick Instagram? I think it's based on your personality, right? If I were a fiction writer, I probably wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on video unless you just have a natural knack for it. But there's some people that might be able to do that. Again, just remember, it's not about you. It's not about your book. It's about the content that you can create. And it doesn't really have to take you a whole lot of time every week to do it. The next tip is one that's very simple, and that is if you haven't published a book yet, finish that book as soon as possible. If you have published a book, write that next book as soon as possible. And I think the next question is, because I think a lot of people start with standalone novels or standalone books, I think the next question you want to ask yourself is, are you going to write a standalone book or are you going to write a series? Because I think if you're going to write a standalone book, your path to $100 or your path to anything meaningful is going to be a lot harder because you're going to have to rebuild that audience every single time you have a standalone. Whereas if you have a series, it's just a lot easier to make money with series. Something to consider. The next thing I would do is I would ask other authors in my genre, other indie authors in my genre, if they would help promote my book. Now, this is extremely hard for me to do because I am a textbook introvert. I hate reaching out to people and asking them for help. Even if I know that it's not going to bother them, I always feel like I'm bothering people. And so that's very hard for me to do, even at my level. But that's something that would absolutely be critical if I were just starting out. And it's just reaching out to people who are maybe on your same level, people who are at a different level. But the key is to make sure that they're in your genre, because that's how you start to develop readers. And just be prepared that if you're watching this and you don't have an audience yet, just be prepared that the majority of those authors that you reach out to are probably going to say no to you. I got no probably 50, 60 times before I had anyone that said yes. And when someone does say yes, temper your expectations, right? You might only get 1 or 2 readers from that person sharing your book. But again, that's all you need to start getting that money in and to start those sales to make your path to $100. All right, so the next thing I would do is, because I've got a book published, I've asked people to share it, I would ask for reviews. So this is extremely tedious. This is something I did very early on in my career that I don't enjoy doing and that I probably won't do very often again. And that's going through book blog directories and reaching out to book reviewers and book bloggers who publish reviews on books in my genre. So I would do that. And I mean, there's tons of directories out there. I mean, it seems like it always changes, so I hesitate to recommend any names. But there's a lot of book bloggers out there. I mean, if you want to find book bloggers in your genre, just, go to Google and type in your genre plus book reviews, and you will get pages and pages of people who review blogs. Now, again, this is a numbers game. This is why it's so tedious. I think I sent out my first book to maybe 200 reviewers, or I sent pitches to 200 reviewers asking them if they'd be interested. And it was like only 10 people replied. So the numbers are crazy stupid. Just don't be discouraged. When you're reaching out to people and no one's responding, or people are saying no, or you go to a book blogger's page and turns out they're on a hiatus. I mean, all these things happen, and it's kind of a pain. But those reviews are critical, because when people do come across your page, you want them to see that your book has some level of social proof. If you've never written a book before and a reader stumbles across your page, it's going to be hard to convince them to buy your book, even if you have a really, really good book description, if you have no reviews. So even just a handful of reviews can go a long way to helping you get some sales early on. The next thing I would do is, on my website and on my platform, whether it's social media or blogging or podcasting, I would use affiliate links to the products and services that I currently use or recommend. Now, when you're just starting off, this is going to be almost no money for most of you, but this is a good skill to start getting in the habit of doing. So, for example, if you blog and maybe you want to talk about the books that inspired you, right? That's a very common beginning blog thing to do. You could use an Amazon affiliate link for those books that inspired you and link to them at the bottom of your blog post. And so if anyone happens to be reading your blog post and they click and they go to Amazon and they buy that book, you get a commission. But the nice part is that you also get a commission on anything else that they buy within that shopping session. So, true story, I've had people buy MacBook Pros after clicking on my affiliate links. I've had people buy cat food. I've had people buy electronics and all sorts of other random things. And I've gotten a commission on those things that they buy, right? And it started because they visited my affiliate link through one of my books. So that's a great way to kind of build in some additional income with your stuff. So if you use a writing app, or if there's a service that you really like, create a page on your website and say services that I use, and just put that there. And you might be surprised that you could get some clicks. All right, so the next thing I would do to make my first $100 is I would pay very close attention to Amazon ads, right? So making sure that I've got a good ad copy, making sure that my book description is as good as it can be, with a good hook, that it's copywritten, and that the product page looks good, so that my ads would convert as much as possible. If I were just starting off, I might dabble in Amazon first and get some momentum there before moving into Facebook. Facebook will just eat up your money. You'll spend more money on Facebook than you make if you have no experience at this. So I would definitely start with Amazon ads. I'd start with $1 a day, and I'd just tweak it until I'm getting a lot of impressions, and until some of those impressions start converting into sales, and I'd just tweak it as I go. The next thing I would do is I would use that in conjunction with Amazon's Kindle Unlimited. So you guys know how I feel about Kindle Unlimited, but if it's just my first book and I don't have a prayer, then I probably would enroll in Kindle Unlimited, at least for the first maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, just to get some of that money from page reads, and then I can take that and go wide later on. KU is going to help increase your visibility. It's going to get you some initial readers. It's going to give your book a little bit more preference in the Amazon algorithms. And so if you're just trying to make your first few bucks, I don't think it's a bad way to go. The next thing I would do is I would make sure that I publish the book in multiple formats. At a minimum, I would publish it in ebook and in paperback. So I think everybody here is probably would do the ebook route, but I would also make a paperback version. I know it takes additional time. It does take additional effort, but you never know, right? I mean, somebody comes across your book page, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to buy, but if a reader only reads paperbacks, you want to make sure that they have a paperback available, and plus, you'll get a higher royalty when they buy it. Now, I know some of you are going to ask me about audio in the comments. If it's your first book or your first couple of books, I probably wouldn't recommend audio just to start. I mean, audio can be a moneymaker, but you really have to know what you're doing there, because otherwise you can just kind of lose your shirt. Especially if you pay out of pocket for it. And if you're just starting off, you're learning the craft, I don't necessarily know that I would recommend audio right now. Get a few books under your belt, and then you can reevaluate if that makes sense. Another really easy way to start making money is to talk about your book more often. So remember, I don't recommend that you spam people, but there's some simple things you can do. Like, for example, making sure you link to your book from your website. I shouldn't have to say that, but there are authors out there that buy my book, and they don't link to the book on their website. It's crazy. Another thing that you can do is if you are asked to be on a podcast, or if you're asked to be on a blog, you can make sure that you link and you mention your book, not at the end of the interview. Mention your book at the beginning of your interview. Mention the book at least 2 to 3 times throughout your interview. Mention it by name, right? And then at the end, mention the interview. I made that mistake a lot. I would go on podcast interviews and I would talk about my books, but then I wouldn't sell them. I would just talk about them. I wouldn't sell them, right? And the best way to sell anything is to mention it repeatedly. But that's one thing that will help, because like I said, all it takes is just 1 or 2 people from every podcast interview, and that can add up pretty quick. Some of you might have the tolerance to reach out to people to ask if you could be on their blogs or if you could be on their podcasts, but just make sure that you're a good fit. And then also, if they say yes, make sure that you're a good guest. And so the next thing I would consider, and this is something that I think a lot of you could make some money at, and that is writing short stories. So there are a lot of literary magazines out there that actually will pay you money to write short stories. And so all you have to do is write the story and then figure out which magazines might be interested in it, and then send it out and see what happens. Now, I make that sound easy. It's really not that easy. In fact, it's a labor of love. But if you write a lot of short stories to help build your craft, or if you're willing to do that, then you actually could make some decent money here and there if a magazine accepts your work. And also, once you start getting letters from editors saying, hey, we like this, but maybe no thanks, or hey, we love this, we'd love to buy it, that's when you know that you're starting to impact people with your craft, that your craft is at a better level. So there's a great book on this. It's called Playing the Short Game by Douglas Smith. I'll link to it in the video description. Fantastic book. Best book on writing short stories that I certainly have ever read. It's about the business of short stories and how you can make money from them. Another great website, if you're looking for magazines or places where you could send your stories that actually will pay you money, check out Raylan.com, Ralan. I'll link to that in the video description as well. That has a list of majority of the paying markets that will actually pay money for writers if they accept their stories. And then the next thing I would do, I'm giving you a lot of tips here, but the next thing I would do is I would make sure I establish an email list early, and make sure I have something to send to them on a regular basis. Just super important to start building that list, because at least with fiction, your list is going to grow really slow. I mean, some people have the blessing of getting a list that just skyrockets, but with fiction, your list is going to grow really, really, really slow. So just establish it. Make sure that you're giving away something of value for free. make sure you set up an autoresponder sequence that's well written, that introduces people to you. They introduce people to your books. Autoresponders should have a lot of character in them, I think. And make sure you put some time and attention into that, and just kind of set it and just, go on with your merry way, and just let that autoresponders, those autoresponders in that email list work for you while you're writing your next book. So that way, when you do write that next book, you've got, maybe a few people on your list, you can send it to them. And then if a percentage of those people buy it, that'll help you get to, that first $100 a lot faster. So those are the tips that I would use to make my first $100 as a writer. Like I said, it took me nearly a year and 8 books before I even made $100, and I'm not exaggerating. In fact, when my accountant did my first tax return, she looked at my income and my my tax documents, and she was like, "Huh, is this a mistake?" And I was like, "No, it's legit." She's like, "Are you missing a couple of zeros?" And I said, "No, that's legitimately what I made." And so then I had to hang my head in shame. So don't worry. Many of you watching this might make $100 faster than me. That's cool, right? So just know that we have this unhealthy mindset about money and writing in our community that I just think needs to die. And it's this whole, I don't write for the money, or I don't do it for the money, right? I think if you want to be a professional writer, you have to do it for the money. But the money can't be your sole focus, right? You just have to be intentional, and you have to be thoughtful about some of the things that you're doing, because I think that you'll find that readers are more than willing to give you their money. You just have to show them that your book is worth the investment. I wanted to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by my Write to Market course. Watch over my shoulder as I write a novel to market, and also do it without selling my soul. I think that's super, super, super important. Don't chase trends, right? But if you're interested in all the things that I do on my daily basis, and you want a peek into my process of writing, and my process of marketing, and my process of thinking about a novel and thinking about my readers, then you can check the course out by visiting authorlevelup.com/write to market, or just check the link in the video description. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.
Perfect.